All right, welcome back to the shop. Today we have our 84 200X. This is actually the first 200X I ever picked up, and it taught me a lot. It taught me that the 83 and 84s have a condition known as a slip and kicker, and because this is a kickstart only machine, that creates a huge problem. But it's one of those things, if you don't know, you don't know. And so what I found out after doing a top end on it, because it was just completely wore out, the kicker was slipping. And after you feel like you're going to twist your ankle a couple times, you figure out that's not going to work out for you. So I ended up putting in this, this is an ATC 200 engine that I had. It came in a bulk purchase. I had several machines, and this one was the same CC. I did not want to put a 185S in it, though you could have. I went ahead and put the same displacement engine, a 200cc. It's got really good bones. It's a fine machine. One of the things when you convert to an auto X is what they call it, you end up with an automatic clutch, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Makes it for anybody that can ride it, but you do lose your clutch, hand clutch operation, and it performs just like a 200S or anything else really of your entry level three-wheelers. It really makes it in some ways better. Anybody can get on it, they can ride it. It's really simple. It's an auto clutch. The trade-off is you actually lose the pedal mount for your brake. Now I know there's guys out there that they will make one that comes off of here and swings down real low and brings the pedal out here, but the original 200X brake mount was actually cast into the side of the engine, and of course when you change engines you lose that. So what I did here is kind of an old trick, is run master cylinders on both sides, right and left. So you have front brake is traditionally where it's always been, and then instead of a clutch you have a rear hand brake. It takes some getting used to, but it works really well. Just whoever's riding it needs to know that your brakes are at your hands and not your feet. One could argue possibly that, you know, it might be easier for some people maybe that don't have full control of their feet for whatever reason, to use hand controls. So, you know, to each his own. So why am I pointing with everything with this coat hanger? Well, we're going to fix a problem with this 200X with this coat hanger, believe it or not. And it's a pretty common failure point, and so I think that's what we're going to cover today. So how do you fix a three-wheeler with a coat hanger? Well, what we need is a small diameter, a smidgen of this coat hanger. I can probably cut it right off the hook there, give this back to the wife, and she won't be mad at me for taking stuff out of the house. And so I'm going to get a pair of pliers here. We're just going to get ready to cut this off. What I had was this machine started fine yesterday and came out the day after that, and it wouldn't crank. And I'm getting ready to sell this one, make a little space here in the shop. And so, you know, a running machine always brings a better price point than a machine that doesn't run. And so I'm getting this one ready to sell. And, you know, that's when it's going to act up. If you've got a piece of equipment, if it's got a motor on it or wheels, it could run every day of its life until the moment you get ready to sell it, and that's when it's going to act up. And case in point, that's exactly what happened to this one. And so I know a lot of guys are out there, y'all have some timing questions about these first hardtail, for the most part, your 185, your 185S, your 200, your 200S, your 200ES, your 200E, and your 200X. Those 7 machines, I believe, share so many components. And so I'm going to take this opportunity to kind of go over timing, and that's kind of what happened to this machine here. As you see, I've started here at the crank and went ahead and pulled the pull assembly off. Remember, this is a ATC 200 engine, same as a 200S. So we went ahead and pulled the pull cord assembly off of this machine. We pulled the rotor and the pickup. Here's the pickup here. It's just hang out to the side, and this is all the way down to the cam. And some of you seasoned viewers will probably already know what's wrong with this. What I was having and what I was experiencing is it ran yesterday, and then today it popped a few times, and then it wouldn't start anymore. And I knew it wasn't carburetor. It just didn't have that type of symptom. So I pulled my valve covers and I did an initial timing check here, and I looked at the rotor and everything looked fine here. And so with all of this matching and it's still not running, I knew I needed to go a little deeper. And if you look really, really close, right on top of this is the snout of the cam. This is your cam chain, and this is your upper cam chain sprocket. That little pin right there is supposed to protrude out. I'm gonna put the camera down for a second, and I've got to get this little pin out. It should be sticking out here, and that's what the rotor carriage rides on, and that's what indexes it, so it knows where to stay and where to fire. And what happened with this machine is it would spin, but it would never fire at the right time, so therefore it's never going to run. When it backfired in my hand and it pulled the cord out of my hand, I knew it was one of two things. It was either going to be the two springs had finally let go, which they're on their way out. These are pretty bad. Or maybe this pin, and so that's why I tore the machine down this far, and sure enough, that's what we found. So let's get started. Well, good morning, everybody. Some 5-minute jobs take 2 days. I don't know why that is. Why is that? I don't know. But I got up early this morning. As you can tell, the sun is just coming up. Look at that. Yeah. She's rubbing her head on that post. Pretty cool, isn't it? Yep. Country living. Gotta love it. It's about 7. It's you know, one of those days you just wake up. No alarm clock, just glad to be alive. Before we get started, real quick, I got to give a shout out to a fan, Earl. I hope you had a lot of fun at Trike Fest this week, and that was nice of you to send me a message. I've got a sticker pack headed your way. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and it's good to see the next generation coming right along. So today, what we have is we're continuing on this 84. And I don't know how we're going to edit this, but I thought it would be a good opportunity to stop and kind of go over timing. So this was supposed to be a will it run, and no, it didn't run. It didn't want to run at all, and that's the problem, because it did run and it ran very well. It's one of those things. I don't know. I've got a guy that lives out here in my shop. His name's Murphy, and if you know anything about Murphy, if you go to Murphy in your shop, if it can happen, it will happen. And it did. It happened. So I decided to sell the 84 here, and we were going to kind of clean it up. I put some new tires on it, and I wanted to run it a little bit, and it ran fine. And I took some really good pictures. We got it cleaned up, and it's a really a solid machine. I kind of hate to see it go, but you can't keep them all. So I decided that I would go ahead and I'd come out the next day and I would ride it. You know, I went in and I posted my ad, and I was going to sell it. And so I thought I'd come out and I'd ride it a little bit, you know, kind of one last time before somebody, you know, comes along and buys it. And it wouldn't start. Now, it presents me with an opportunity for a video. It had all the classic signs. We had spark, we had fuel, we had air, and I knew we had compression because it ran just the day before. And I get a lot of people that ask, you know, well, I have spark and I have fuel, and that's great. And that's very important. It's, you know, the bulk of what you need. But timing is very, very important. It's so much so that this is kind of how I want to do this video. We came out, we pulled the cord on this one, and we had spark, and we had fuel and air, and I knew we had compression because it ran the day before, but it wouldn't start. And so, like most of you, I grabbed a little starter fluid, I just sprayed just a little bit in the carburetor, and it still wouldn't start. Now, if you don't get a pop, a bang, a little pop, something off of starter fluid, you got one of two things right out of the gate that you got to check. Either you don't have compression, and that could be for a couple of different reasons. It could be a wore out engine, it could be valves, it could be hanging open, or it could be, you know, rings, which kind of goes back to having a wore out engine. I knew it wasn't compression because it ran literally the day before, so it had to be timing. It was really all it could be. If you've got starter fluid, you know it's going to hit. If you've got spark, you know it's going to ignite. And if you've got compression, then you know you're going to be able to control that ignition and cause, you know, a pop or a bang. So I thought I was going to just tear into this and I was going to find something timing related. And I did. What I found was the cam. There's a little post right there in the cam that sticks up, and that's what holds the carrier for your advance for your timing. That had actually sheared completely off. I've heard of it happen. I've never had it happen to me, but it happened on this one, and it literally sheared right off. And I thought, well, great, I found the problem. Quick fix. I'll get that little piece out. I'll put a new piece in. Now, if you run into this situation where you got to make that little pin, an old style metal coat hanger would work. Actually, probably what would work better would be a drill bit, not the sharpened end, but the other end. Cut a piece of that off, use it, because that would be hardened steel. It'd be the same as this. Well, in this video, and I don't know how I'm going to edit it, but you see I went after that little post and I could not get that post out, and whatever that is hardened, and I couldn't drill it. Luckily, this kind of goes back to one of the other videos about having parts bikes. And so I was able to go out to Boneyard and pull a cam out of another machine. And I've already inserted it into this machine, and it has the post on it here. It's ready to go. But I thought I'd stop and kind of go over timing with you. And I know that has thrown a lot of guys off. It's really easy to have that happen, even for people that, you know, work with these on a regular basis. It happens. And so one of the things is, let's just kind of go over timing. So what I thought I would do is, I've pulled this outer bell off. I'm sure it has a name, I don't know it, but it actually holds the stator down on the bottom of the engine. I went ahead and pulled that off because I'll tell on myself a little bit. I dropped on the back of the cam, there's a bushing, and it sits on the far side of the head. And as I was pulling the cam out, the bushing fell off, and it fell all the way down inside I'm not kidding, it did. It fell all the way down inside the engine, and I tried to fish it out with a magnet, and I tried to fish it out with a coat hanger, and I was not having a good day on the lake that day. And so I ended up having to take the bell off, and sure enough, it was laying right here in the bottom of the engine. And so it was a good opportunity. I needed to change the oil anyway. And again, this is going to be able to show you something that maybe you're not going to be able to see as your engine is together. And this information is going to apply to the 185, the 185S, the 200, the 200S, the 200E, the 200ES, and the 200X. All those engines exactly the same. Actually, with a little gray area, it would also apply to the 125M second generation. So you've got your crank down here, and you have a crank sprocket that your timing chain runs on. That timing chain runs up and goes around your cam sprocket. The sprocket is separate from the cam. It can bolt on one of two ways. And so there's your first opportunity to kind of get something backwards. I had a machine come in, it was exactly that. And it took me a little while to figure it out. I'm gonna go over the steps of setting this up from the cam down. You follow along, and what that's gonna do is that's gonna kind of tell you how all these parts work together and how to set your machine up. So first and foremost, starting at the top here, in this sprocket here, this is your cam gear, cam sprocket, has a dimple at the top. As you see, mine is sitting at 12 o'clock to remind you that 12 o'clock meaning straight up. There's a dimple, there's a notch in the top of the head here, and that's so you can line that dimple up. Honda put that in there to reference. It's a reference mark. So here's another cam. It's the same cam as that one. The gear is not on it. This is the cam that came out of there. As you see, this cam has 2 lobes, 2 bolt holes. That means that sprocket can go on this way, or you can take it off, turn it 180 degrees and stick it right back on, and that will be incorrect. So here's what I want you to pay attention to. When you are setting your machine up, you need to make sure that that little post that sticks out of your cam is not at 12 o'clock, but 11 o'clock. If this is the face of a clock. And I over explain this because I know there's a lot of young people that watch that may not know it. So if you know this, don't roll your eyes, just kind of fast forward to the part you might not know. If you take your little pen, make your cam to where it's actually at 11 o'clock. When you do that, these 2 bolt holes, these 2 openings, will be top and bottom of one another. It'll be 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. If you do that and take your cam that has the dimple, that dimple is not on the bottom, it's only on one side. That dimple goes straight up. So you have the cam with your post at 11 o'clock. You have your sprocket that goes on with your dimple at 12 o'clock. You can't mess that relationship up between the sprocket and the cam. When you insert your cam into your head, the cam has lobes on the back. Those lobes is what controls the valves. Lobe here, lobe here. That's what I'm referring to if you don't know. When you put that cam in your machine, you can put it with the lobes up, which would also put the dimple at the bottom, or you can put it with the lobes down, that would put the dimple at the top, and that is the correct way to put it in. That's how you install your cam. Your cam goes in, lobes down. Those are the lobes. That would be the orientation of your cam when you insert it into the engine. These lobes are pointing downward. Now, if you do that, then your cam would be installed properly. And you go, well, the chain, you can get the chain a tooth off. That's very important. Yes, you can. You can get the chain way off. So how are you gonna know where to put the chain? Is by your flywheel. This is your flywheel. You've had to take it off to get this far, but if yours is on your machine, this is what you're used to looking at. When you look through the little hole in your case there, you're gonna find the T and the F. Now this one, I'm gonna tell you, was kind of hard to find. A lot of them get really rusty, so while I had it off the machine, I went over to the wire wheel and I wire wheeled it. And this is a good opportunity if you've never seen one close up. I've put 2 lines on mine, though they're hard to see, they are there. Right above my finger is the letter F, that's for fire. And just to the side of that is the letter T, and that is for timing. So how do you know where this goes in relationship to that? Your flywheel is keyed. There's a key way cut into it. If you see that little notch that's in there, probably see me through there. That little keyway indexes on this moon key that's cut into this crank. Now, I have seen these keyways, these keys go missing, go flying out, and I've seen this spin, and that will throw off your timing also. Inside here is a series of magnets. Those magnets correlate to the stator, and the stator is what sends out your power or your spark. Your flywheel's held on by the keyway. You can put it on here, and then lightly spin it with a light push inward, and you'll feel it will engage like that, and now it's locked in. Now that, of course, that had to be tightening up, but for these purposes of explaining, that's going to be fine. So what you would want to do, remember we're looking inside through the little inspection hole that's in the top of our case. This is our case here. This would be our inspection hole. You would have taken that screw out. You would look through there, and what you would hope to find is the F and the T for fire and for start, which is right there. So with your flywheel indexed on your crank by the keyway, you have your fire and your T, or your F and your T, pointing straight up through your hole. At the same time, your cam post is at 11 o'clock and the dimple in the cam sprocket is at 12 o'clock. That engine is timed perfect. If you get to this point and you bolt your cam up and your cam is not at 12 o'clock, then what you need to do is, what I would do is I would take these 2 bolts off and I would drop this ring, the sprocket, down off the shoulder of the cam. That will make the chain loose. I would walk the chain around, not moving the cam. I would walk the chain around as needed to make this at TDC, top dead center, or flywheel, the F and T straight up. And then once I get the cam in relation to the chain in this orientation, then I would bolt it back in. And a lot of guys, they can't get the cam chain back on the cam gear. So this is your tensioner here, and this is a good opportunity to see how this works. The way I do it is I take a screwdriver and I come in here and I pry underneath the sprocket just a little bit. Now let's be careful, but pry up just a little bit and that sprocket will slide on the shelf of that cam. But how to adjust the cam chain and understanding how the cam chain tensioner works. This is a good opportunity with the machine open like this to kind of see all the parts. This is your stator here. I've just got mine pulled out of the way. This 14 millimeter bolt right here is the adjuster for the chain tensioner. And all the tensioner is this arm right here, okay? And it's on a spring. As you see, I can push it down with my finger. So it's spring loaded. And what this is it self-adjusts. You loosen this 14 millimeter bolt. This should float, and that's where you can stick a drill bit or Allen key or Allen wrench or something like that down in there. Push that down and make sure this plunger goes up and down, up and down. Make sure it's free and it's floating. Once you get that floating, you see it applies tension to the cam chain here. And then this is just a constant tensioner, constant pressure being pushed on it. Once you get this pushed down, then I lock this down with the 14 millimeter. The 10 is in an inspection hole. That's what you put your wrench through. And that's it. And that really is all there is to it. Setting the timing from scratch. You literally, understanding that the flywheel is going to make 2 revolutions for every 1 cycle of the 4 strokes. So a lot of guys get confused with the flywheel because it goes around twice. You can set your timing up incorrectly because you've set it up at TDC on the wrong stroke. Now, because the cam was out of this and our valves are not adjusted, this rotation does not matter because TDC is always TDC. Where it becomes complicated is when you bring the valves into play and either the valves are open at the first TDC or the valves are shut at the second TDC. And that would be your compression stroke, the second TDC. So that's it. Pretty straightforward. I hope I haven't overcomplicated it. But that's it. As for setting your valves up, think about your valves like this. You have your valve post or valve spring, and then as your rocker comes down, it sits on top of it. You want to be able to slide a piece of paper between there. So technically, the valve or the rocker arm does not touch the valve. Remember, a piece of paper should be able to slide through there, or a feeler gauge. So there should be 0 pressure on your valve at rest. At TDC, the valves are shut. There's no pressure on your rocker arm touching your valve. So you can literally set them up by finger to where it just sits there. There's no pressure, and then tighten it down. It would be a little loose for running, but that would get you up and running. That's how these are set. They're just set loose right this second. Once I get this machine up and running, then I will make a final adjustment, which is just to tighten them up a little bit. That's really it to timing. It's I don't mean to oversimplify it, but once you get an understanding of how it works, you realize that it really is only going to work one way. And so we'll build this back out. The post that I referenced to earlier, this is your carrier. This is what it looks like on the machine. As you see on the back here, it's got a notch here. That notch is where that post goes into. That makes this only go on one way. You're going to slide it on your cam, and it's going to line up, and it's going to index just like that, and it's not going to be able to go on any other way. It's going to slide over that post. Now, the other opportunity where people have a problem is when they install this magnet. Now this magnet is only got a magnet on one side, but it's identical almost. If you look really close, there's a line here at the top. See that little line that's cast into the aluminum? There's not a line cast into the bottom. This end has the magnet on it. This end does not have a magnet on it. Though it looks the same, it's not. So when you install this, you're going to have your little black box that's on the pickup. It's going to sit right here about the 12 o'clock position. This magnet needs to also point to the 12 o'clock position. And as you see, there's two little dogs here. I call them dogs. These are spring-loaded weights, just like an HEI on a GM. You can just open these up a little bit by hand. Slide this in, and it locks into place just like so. There's a 10mm bolt that sits right there. And so what you would end up having is you would have this is your pickup. You want to clean this, make sure that's good and clean. Make sure your magnet's good and clean when you're re-putting one of these back together. And that's going to sit just like this. And so now your relationship, when you have the flywheel on F, fire, which is right there, you want to make sure that your magnet and your pickup are sitting just like that at fire. They're in a straight line at fire. You can advance it just a little bit, maybe a degree, you know, by changing where this pickup sits. You're advancing or retarding the time, and this is just the same thing as turning the distributor on a small block Chevy. You may want to set your advance up a degree, maybe 2, but really no more than that. I've never experienced a performance gain. Advancing it about 2 degrees would be ideal. Making engine really easy to start, but other than that, don't get crazy with it. You are limited by the cover. The cover that covers over this is going to limit how far you can actually slide this around. That's why it's made the way it is. So you can't get 2 at a time based on where you put this pickup. That's timing 101. Really, it really is. I'm going to put this engine back together on time lapse and fire it up and get it ready for sale. It's time to move it on and get focused on something else. But let's see what happens. How's that? It's not what I was expecting today. I really thought this was going to be a 10-minute fix. We're going to put that pin in and call it a day. And nope. So let's see how she rides. It's been a while. that's it. That's timing 101. That's setting the cam up, kind of understanding the relationship between the cam gear and the crank gear, and we can go over more in detail later on another video, but this one's ready to go. And it's a good looking machine. Good looking machine. One of the few ways to save a slipping kicker is to do a motor swap. Remember, 185, 185S, 200, ATC 200, 200S, 200M will work. And if you've got some fabrication skills, 200E will work too. But that's it for today, guys. She's ready to go. Check that out. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I'm going to get out of this hot shop, get in the house, edit this video, and get it out to you this evening. If you're interested in some new shirts, we got a new design out. We got a 350X out. My buddy Brent did an awesome job on that. Check that out. It's in the description below. You can see a little bar there underneath the video, so y'all can go, you can get that image on shirts, hats, hoodies, cups, mugs. I even think they got some swimsuits in there, but no extra pocket. Y'all have a good day, and I will talk to you later.